Hello and welcome to News live from Islamabad. I'm Govt and these are the headlines. Pakistan says India is trying to destabilize the country by igniting sectarianism and perpetrating terrorist activities. In a weekly briefing, a Foreign Office spokesman says several Indian agents have been arrested for their involvement in terrorist activities in Pakistan. He said India's purchase of Rafale jets is part of its nuclear delivery system, which would lead to an arms race in the region. He added that Prime Minister Imran Khan would raise the Kashmir issue in his address at the UN General Assembly on the 25th of September. China has begun military drills near the Taiwan Strait as a U.S. envoy, Keith Krach, landed in Taipei for a high-level visit. In a press briefing, a Defense Ministry spokesperson said the action is necessary due to the current situation in the region. Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko says he has been forced to close the country's western border with Poland and Lithuania. During an address, Lukashenko said the military will be on high alert and the border with Ukraine will be strengthened. Both Poland and Lithuania say the borders are operating as usual with no sign of closures. The global number of COVID-19 cases has crossed 30 million with over 946,000 fatalities. World's second worst hit country, India's caseload has exceeded 5.2 million after a spike of over 96,000 infections in the last 24 hours. 1,174 people have died overnight in India, raising the toll to over 84,000. In Pakistan, 9 people have lost their lives in the last 24 hours, taking the toll to 6,408 with over 304,000 confirmed cases. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Pakistan has summoned a senior Indian diplomat to register its protest over the ceasefire violations by Indian forces along the line of control. In a statement, the Foreign Office said unprovoked Indian fighting wounded 3 civilians in Hot Spring and Jandar Road sectors. It said Indian military regularly targets the civilian population along the LOC with heavy artillery and automatic weapons. The Foreign Office said New Delhi's senseless acts are in clear violation of the 2003 ceasefire understanding. It said India has committed 2,280 ceasefire violations this year, resulting in 18 martyrdoms and 183 injuries to civilians. Pakistan says India is trying to destabilize the country by igniting sectarianism and perpetrating terrorist activities. In a weekly briefing, a Foreign Office spokesman said several Indian agents have been arrested for their involvement in terrorist activities in Pakistan. He said India's purchase of the Rafale jets is part of its nuclear delivery system, which will lead to an arms race in the region. He added that Prime Minister Imran Khan would raise the Kashmir issue in his address at the UN General Assembly on the 25th of September. Referring to the ongoing political dynamics in the Middle East, the spokesman said Pakistan's position on the Palestinian issue would remain unchanged. China has begun military drills near the Taiwan Strait as the U.S. envoy, Keith Krach, landed in Taipei for a high-level visit. In a press briefing, China's Defense Ministry spokesperson said the action is necessary due to the current situation in the region. The spokesperson said the maneuver is aimed at protecting national sovereignty and territorial integrity. He said the recent collusion between Washington and Taipei is creating disturbances in the region.
Taiwan is a sacred and inseparable part of China. Taiwan is a purely internal Chinese affair that brooks no foreign interference. Recently, the United States and the Democratic Progressive Party have colluded with each other closely and are frequently causing issues. Whether it is using Taiwan as leverage to curb China or relying on another's power to bully or frighten others, these are just wishful thinking and doomed to fail.
The U.S. envoy is due to meet Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen today and will also attend a memorial service for late President Lee Teng-hui tomorrow. Now moving on, Russia says securing a long-lasting peace in the Middle East will be impossible without solving the Palestinian problem. In a statement, Russia's foreign ministry stressed the importance of resuming talks between Israel and Palestine without preconditions. It said Israel's normalization deals with Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates are not enough. The statement read, "The Palestinian issue must be resolved in accordance with the fundamental principle of two states." The ministry called on the regional and international players to ramp up coordinated efforts to settle the Palestinian problem. It said Russia is ready for joint work within the UN Security Council framework of the Quartet for negotiations on a Middle Eastern settlement. Jordan's Prime Minister Omar Razaz has reiterated his country's firm stance on Palestinian cause. In a statement, he warned Israel that lasting peace is impossible as long as it continues to act unilaterally. Razaz said a comprehensive peace will not be achieved unless the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people are met. He said Israel's unilateral measures undermine the rights of the Palestinian people to establish their independent state with Jerusalem as its capital. The Prime Minister said Amman is ready to have a unified stance with Arab countries with regard to regional and external challenges. Palestinians have slammed the recent normalization deals Bahrain and the UAE signed with Israel as a betrayal of their cause. The Saudi-led military coalition says it destroyed a drone launched by the Houthis towards the kingdom. Earlier, a Houthi spokesman said a drone had made a strike on a military target at Aba Airport in southern Saudi Arabia. Saudi state media quoted the coalition as saying the drone was launched at civilian targets in the southern region of Khamis Mushat. The airport near the border has been a regular target for Houthi drones and missiles in the last 2 years. This comes as the UN is mediating a process to get Yemen's government and the Houthis to reach an agreement to end the war. Delegations from the warring parties are due to meet in Switzerland this week for talks on UN-backed prisoner exchange deal. The US says it hopes to move forward with naming Qatar as a major non-NATO ally. In a news conference, senior US official Timothy Landring said the ally status provides foreign nations with benefits in trade, defense and security. Landring said becoming a major non-NATO ally gives a country preferential access to US military equipment and technology. He said prioritized cooperation on training are some other benefits of becoming a non-NATO ally. Currently, 17 countries have this status, including the Gulf Arab states of Kuwait and Bahrain. Qatar already hosts the largest US military facility in the Middle East. Turkey has launched a new anti-terror operation Yildirim 12 against Kurdistan Workers' Party in the eastern Bitlis province. This comes after Turkey's defense ministry said 2 soldiers were martyred in an attack by the PKK in northern Iraq. In a statement, Turkey's interior ministry said over 700 security personnel will participate in the operation. It said Ankara will eliminate all PKK terrorists in the country and neutralize others hiding in the region. Turkey said the military has neutralized 71 terrorists and destroyed 141 hiding spots and storages during Yildirim operations so far. Earlier last week, Ankara launched Operation Yildirim 11 to tackle the PKK terrorists in the eastern Sarat province. Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko says he has been forced to close the country's western border with Poland and Lithuania. During an address, Lukashenko said the military will be on high alert and the border with Ukraine will be strengthened. Lukashenko reiterated the August election was legal. The president urged neighboring countries to stop what he called crazy politics, as he doesn't want his country to be at war.
Понимаем, что в их арсенале
We are forced to withdraw the troops from the streets, put half of the army on standby, and close the state border from the west, primarily with Lithuania and Poland. We are forced to strengthen the state border, unfortunately, with our fraternal Ukraine.
Both Poland and Lithuania say the borders are operating as usual with no sign of closures. Earlier, the EU proposed a supervised rerun of the controversial vote, while bloc's lawmakers called for imposing sanctions on Lukashenko. Now, moving on, Ukraine and the US have started joint military exercises near the western city of Yavoriv. The drills began 2 days after Russia started joint military drills with forces in neighboring Belarus. In a statement, the US Embassy in Kiev said the Rapid Trident exercises involved nearly 4,000 servicemen from 10 countries. It said the exercises show the strength of the US-Ukraine strategic partnership. At the opening ceremony, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said a modern and equipped army is a priority for him. Kiev's relations with Moscow deteriorated in 2014 after Russia annexed the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine. Kremlin says a water bottle found in allegedly poisoned opposition leader Alexei Navalny's hotel could have served as evidence had it not been taken out of Russia. Kremlin refused to comment on the allegations, saying the Russian specialists are yet to examine the bottle. Moscow maintains it needs more evidence before opening a formal criminal investigation into the Navalny case. Laboratories in Germany, France and Sweden have established Navalny was poisoned by Novichok nerve agent, a Russian military-grade poison. Earlier, Navalny's team said the water bottle from his hotel room in Tomsk had traces of Novichok nerve agent. Navalny's team member George Alburov said a fair inquiry will reveal the Kremlin's involvement in the poisoning attempt.
We continue to demand a serious and genuine investigation, and we know where the results will lead. These results will show that the Kremlin, Putin, and the FSB that organized it all are behind Alexei's poisoning. That's why we don't see any investigation, because they can't investigate themselves.
So time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In Somalia, President Mohammed Abdullahi Mohammed has appointed Mohammed Hussein Roble as the Prime Minister ahead of the elections next year. He will replace former Prime Minister Hassan Ali Khair, who was voted out of the office by the parliament in July for failing to pave the way for the democratic elections due before February 2021. The government in Mogadishu has been in negotiations with Somalia's federal states over how to proceed with the parliamentary and presidential elections. However, the process has been held up by political infighting between the president and the country's regional leaders. Somalia has set itself a goal of holding its first fully democratic one-man, one-vote election since 1969, but an agreement reached between the president, regional leaders and the mayor of the Mogadishu has conceded that such a vote would be impossible within the time frame remaining before Somalia's parliament expires in November. UK opposition leader Keir Starmer says the government has been caught off guard by its creaking COVID-19 testing system. Britain's government acknowledged problems in the system as soaring demand met with worsening turnaround times and availability. Data showed only 14% of the test results in England came back in 24 hours last week, a sharp fall from 32% the week before. Pollster YouGov said the UK government's approval rating fell to its lowest over handling of the pandemic, with 63% viewing it badly. Starmer also said there had been a lack of planning regarding opening of the economy.
We want schools open, we want children back in school, we want to reopen the economy. They're good things. But the problems we're now seeing with infections are a necessary consequence of that. And so they're not unexpected. Why has the government been caught off guard by something that should have been planned for?
Catalonia leader Quim Torra says he is not afraid of Spain's Supreme Court magistrates and will keep working to achieve a Catalan republic. In a televised speech, Torra said he will not stop carrying out his duties as a regional leader. The Catalan leader said he is completely dedicated to battling the coronavirus pandemic. Torra said he will not deviate from his duty of serving the citizens. Earlier, an appeal had been filed in the court over a disobedience sentence that would bar him from holding public office. The Spanish government has already ruled out any amnesty for the jailed Catalan leaders or a referendum on independence. Bolivia's interim president, Janine Áñez, has pulled out from the presidential election race. In a video message, Áñez said she wants to unify those opposing the candidate for the party of former President Evo Morales. Áñez said if the opposition candidates don't unite, democracy will lose. She said her withdrawal is not a sacrifice but an honor. The interim leader said she will do everything necessary to pacify the country.
Today, I put aside my candidacy for the presidency of Bolivia for the sake of democracy. I do it for the unity of those of us who love democracy. I do it to help achieve victories for those who do not want dictatorship. And I do it in honor of the fight that the Bolivian people have maintained so that the dictatorship leaves forever.
Áñez took control of the government after Morales was forced to quit due to 2019 controversial presidential election. The polls are due to take place on October the 18th. Now, moving on, Peru's top court has rejected the government's attempt to block impeachment proceedings against President Martin Vizcarra. The Constitutional Court ruled by 5 votes to 2 to reject a petition to suspend congressional debate on the impeachment. The Constitutional Court also voted by 6 to 1 to admit a lawsuit to determine if Congress exceeded its powers by impeaching Vizcarra. The president is charged with moral incapacity over leaked audio tapes and alleged ties to a little-known singer involved in a fraud case. Vizcarra has no party representation in the multi-faction legislature that requires 87 votes to remove the president from the office.
It is important that the Constitutional Court made this decision. It's really a difficult moment for our country. I think our democratic system and the independence of powers is strengthened. And now we have to wait for President Vizcarra to go to Congress even though he has the power to send a lawyer. The best thing for our democracy would be for him to show up, remaining calm with humility to face the serious allegations the country needs answer to.
The president has rejected the claims as without any foundation. Now moving on, Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro has praised his government's preservation of environment as fires continue to rage in the Amazon rainforest. Amazon deforestation has surged 34.5% in the 12 months through July compared to the same period a year ago. Speaking at a public event, Bolsonaro said Brazil is the country that preserves the environment the most. In the Amazon, illegal ranchers and land speculators generally set fire to plots of land to clear them for agricultural purposes. Environmental advocates blame Bolsonaro, who supports more commercial farming and mining in the Amazon, for emboldening those who destroy the forest. The president says developing the Amazon will lift the region out of poverty. In Argentina, measures to halt the spread of the coronavirus pandemic have escalated unemployment and price hike. The hiatus has dragged down many people into poverty who are forced to live in makeshift camps. Look more into the plight of these people in this report.
Argentina's economy is in recession for the 3rd year in a row. The country is headed for a steep 12% contraction this year due to the impact of the pandemic. The economic stagnation has pushed up poverty levels, unemployment, pushing more people out of their homes. According to official data, 3.6 million families in the country have been impacted by homelessness.
I was no longer able to pay rent. I work informally. I'm a painter, and because of the pandemic, I was left without work. I couldn't pay my rent anymore, and I was left out on the street. I even sold my things to pay rent. I sold my furniture, the TV, my things.
The makeshift shacks are made of sheet metal, plastic, wood, and cardboard. Thousands of families have settled in the field as they have no place to go elsewhere.
We need a permanent home for my family, for my baby. One day I have work, the other day I don't. I don't have a way to pay rent. I don't even have enough for me to eat.
The residents of Shantytown are in a miserable plight. According to statistics, almost 400,000 people lost their work during the pandemic. In Guernica, officials are seeking to evict families from this patch of land by the end of September.
Thousands of refugees have been left without shelter with nowhere to go after a fire in an overcrowded refugee camp in MORIA. Amid the misery, an Afghan artist is bringing the refugees' charred ruins of MORIA camp on his canvas. More in this report.
Flames engulfed MORIA migrants camp, forcing thousands of people to flee. They are now forced to sleep in the street without proper shelter, sanitation, food or water. An Afghan refugee, Ahmed Shukran Shehzad, witnessed the sufferings, and being an artist, he found a way to express the pain and hardship migrants faced. He has picked up a brush and depicted the charred ruins of MORIA camp on his canvas.
People were awake night and day. Children were uncomfortable. Women were uncomfortable. People that are in need, pregnant women, it was difficult for them to live there also.
Shehzad used to teach art lessons to refugee children before the tragedy hit them. Through his art, he wants to divert the world's attention to the troubles of migrants living in a makeshift camp.
I myself suffered greatly in this way, and I wanted to imagine such a scene in my mind and draw it so that people around the world could see and understand, feel something inside, and realize that migrants, whether they are Somali, Afghan, Arab, Congolese, African, they are all facing the same difficulties. They should all be felt compassion for, and they should all be assisted.
The INFERNO has razed most of MORIA to the ground along with many of the migrants' personal belongings. Greece government has been moving the migrants to a new temporary tent camp being referred to as a Karatepe.
The global number of COVID-19 cases has crossed 30 million with nearly 945,000 fatalities. World's second worst hit country, India's caseload has exceeded 5.2 million after a spike of over 96,000 infections in the last 24 hours. 1,174 people have died overnight in India, raising the toll to over 84,000. What in this report?
The coronavirus pandemic has the world in a chaos as governments struggle to contain the viral disease. The World Health Organization says 1 in 7 cases reported to the body is a health worker, and in some countries that figure rises to 1 in 3. Canada's largest province, Ontario, will fine people who hold social gatherings in defiance of new limits amid a spike in cases in the cities of Toronto and Ottawa. While U.S. manufacturers are sharply increasing production of cheap, fast, but less accurate COVID-19 tests.
We're making progress, and I think it's the right approach. Let's have a rapid test so we can do more testing and do it more quickly. But let's make sure that we manage those false positives and false negatives and get people the most accurate information as quickly as possible. So we're going to need a little more data on that.
Leaders of Europe's coronavirus-stricken travel and tourism industries have appealed to the European Union's chief executive to press governments to end quarantine requirements and instead embrace coordinated restrictions in testing. Greece reported 135 cases of coronavirus among migrants and refugees made homeless by a fire at large refugee camp on the island of Lesbos. Spain's growing number of cases across the country is worrying authorities as Madrid accounts for around 1/3 of active coronavirus infections in the country.
We all know what needs to be done. We recognize the difficult and probably the most complex thing is to choose the moment when decisions are made. But as I said before, in the specific case of Madrid, we understand that measures must be taken and we will be supporting it as a ministry, as we are doing, providing all the technical support and resources that are needed.
New Zealand reported no new cases for the first time in more than 5 weeks as hopes rise that an outbreak discovered in Auckland last month has been stamped out. Australia's coronavirus hotspot of Victoria reported its biggest daily rise in infections in more than a week as the state began relaxing lockdown restrictions. Meanwhile, mainland China reported 32 new COVID-19 cases, all imported, marking the highest daily increase in more than a month.
In Pakistan, 9 people have died from COVID-19 in the last 24 hours. The health ministry says the country's death toll has reached 6,408. The ministry said the number of overnight cases increased to 7,752 in the country. It said there are 6,295 active infections, while the total confirmed cases have crossed 304,000 mark. The ministry said over 291,000 people have recovered so far. National Command Operations Center said it had closed 13 educational institutions across the country over non-compliance of COVID-19 health guidelines. One person has been killed while another injured as tropical storm NOUL made landfall in Vietnam. The state news agency says the storm hit the city of Da Nang and traveled north to Tua Thiên Hua province before entering neighboring Laos. The state news agency says the storm is expected to hit wind speeds of up to 135 kilometers per hour. It says the government plans to evacuate up to 500,000 people amid storm-triggered heavy rains in the central parts of the country. Vietnam's weather agency has downgraded NOUL to a low-pressure system but warned against floods and landslides caused by the expected 250-millimeter downpour. In the U.S., Storm Sally has caused heavy rain and flooding in California and Georgia as it continues north from the Gulf Coast. The storm has already battered Florida and Alabama, with the rain turning roads into rivers and leaving homes submerged. Pensacola in Florida experienced up to 5 feet of flooding, which resulted in damaged roads and bridges. Officials say one person was killed when another remains missing in southwest Alabama. They say over 500,000 homes and businesses are without power. The National Hurricane Center says Sally has now weakened to a post-tropical cyclone, but tornadoes are still possible. The British auction house Christie's is planning to sell the skeleton of one of the largest known Tyrannosaurus rexes in early October. Details in this report.
Stan the T-Rex, named after the paleontologist who first discovered its bones, walked the Earth some 67 million years ago. Now, the skeleton will be displayed at Christie's in New York prior to auction on October 6th, with an estimated price of $6 million to $8 million. The current world record price for any dinosaur is Sue, which was sold in 1997 to the Field Museum in Chicago for $8.4 million.
He is certainly one of the most complete, and certainly the most complete since Sue to come to auction. We have 188 of the original bones. Nobody knows how many bones a T-Rex had in life. No complete specimen will ever be found. It's estimated that they probably had about 300.
Christie's has displayed the dinosaur that will remain there till mid-October at its Manhattan, New York house. Stan is 40 feet long with its tail outstretched and 13 feet high.
They are bigger than the other theropod dinosaurs that are related to them. So the size and the ferocity really does stand out. His skull is bigger than, say, an Allosaurus or another meat-eating dinosaur. The clue is in the name, the Tyrannosaurus rex. He is the tyrant lizard king.
Stan will be visible to the public through Christie's windows from the sidewalk, while the auction house also plans to book socially distanced viewings.
Designers Mark Bagley and James Mishka have used their desire for travel as inspiration for their new Spring 2021 collection. They debuted their fashion show via video on the New York Fashion Week digital platform. More in this report.
As travel restrictions were imposed due to the coronavirus pandemic, many activities were put to halt around the world. Fashion designers Mark Bagley and James Mika always wanted to travel to get inspiration for their collections, but they were able to put on their debut for the Spring 2021 collection with their imagination at the New York Fashion Week. The duo filmed a small portion of the completed line at a public garden in Westbury, New York, and said it was a miracle that took place.
It was a crazy season. There were so many starts and stops, and
factories are closed.
Factories are closed. Fabric mills. Layoffs, comebacks, stop, start. It was just, it's a miracle that it came together.
The designers describe their collection as luxe loungewear with many interchangeable pieces, including a sequin pantsuit and chiffon palazzo pants. The collection also included classic evening wear, predicting there will be many celebrations when COVID-19 restrictions lift. The pair, who have been hosting shows for 33 years straight, said the excitement of a show can never be replaced.
You can never replace the excitement, I think, of just a old school fashion show. When those lights go down and that girl struts through, her stuff, first look, it's just, you get goosebumps,
Designer Jason Wu also showed his collection with a limited socially distanced audience, while Tadashi Shoji debuted his collection via a video presentation. New York Fashion Week will end today with Christian Siriano showing his new line from his Connecticut home.
Stocks in Asia are trading mostly higher as Chinese yuan holdings record gains against the dollar. JP Morgan says yuan holdings are gaining strength against the dollar, not observed in recent months, and will continue to gain ground. Mainland Chinese stocks are leading the gains as Shanghai Composite gains over 0.5%. The Shenzhen component has advanced by close to 0.5%, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index gains by over 0.25%. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 gained fractionally higher. South Korea's Kospi also gained marginally. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.